The first round of the 2025 Intercontinental GT Challenge is now complete, and what a thrilling race it was. There was action up and down the field, and it included some awesome on-track racing, dramatic crashes, and historic achievements. So this is a race recap on everything that happened during the 2025 Meguiar's Bathurst 12-hour. Starting at the front of this 22-car field would be the number 77 Craft Bamboo Racing Mercedes, following Lucas Auer's pole lap in the top 10 Pirelli qualifying shootout. The race would begin during the traditional early morning hours in Australia, and already we witnessed some fantastic action. On the narrow straight down to turn 2, cars went 3 wide for the overall lead, with Maximilian Götz in the pole-sitting Mercedes eventually winning out, followed by the 32 BMW M4 and the number 888 AMG GT3. As the race progressed with awesome action continuing to take place, just over 1 hour in, there would be drama for the pole-sitting number 77 Mercedes, as Maximilian Götz and Will Brown's Ferrari made contact at the final turn, which beached the Craft Bamboo Racing Mercedes into the gravel. Thankfully, the number 77 car wasn't out of the race, and would climb back up towards the front later on. But this was still a huge blow for the car that was leading the majority of laps early on. During the safety car caused by that beached Mercedes, the BMW entries from Team WRT as well as Maro Engel's Team GMR Mercedes benefited from making a pit stop, which wouldn't see them lose the lead, and this allowed those 3 cars to take up the top 3 positions. When the green flags were turned, Augusto Farfus led the field away in the number 32 BMW, and the Bavarian-based constructor would end up holding first and second position out of the first couple of corners, with the doctor himself, Valentino Rossi, behind the wheel in the second of those M4s. Soon though, the Team GMR Mercedes, which was in third at the time, would have to serve a drive-through penalty because of a safety car breach, which would force the entry down the order. Drama would soon follow for another Mercedes car, this time the number 222 Scott Taylor racing car, as Craig Lowndes stopped the car before the pits with a suspension issue, and eventually this car became the first retirement of this race. Our first big crash of the day happened at the top of the hill at Mount Panorama. This was an incident between the number 44 Audi R8 LMS GT3 Evo and the number 25 Method Motorsports McLaren GT4 Artura. And this was no fault of the Audi, as the car was just in the wrong place at the wrong time, as the McLaren was the one that hit the wall, and that car eventually made its way into the Audi. The McLaren would have to retire from the race, while the Audi would go into the pits for repairs. The Valmont Racing Squad would do a marvelous job to get the car back out on track. However, the entry would eventually finish 65 laps down. This unfortunately wouldn't be the only crash at the top of the hill though, as later on an even bigger incident happened when Stefan Grove had a massive wreck in the number 4 Mercedes, when the car went airborne after contact with the 75 Express Mercedes. Driver Stefan Grove was visibly injured, but thankfully he was able to get out of the car on his own, which was amazing considering the intensity of this incident, as shown by these violent scenes of the crash. The first concern, of course, is the driver's safety, and Stefan was soon transferred for medical examination at a nearby hospital. Later on, the team of Grove Racing put out this encouraging statement regarding their driver. Grove Racing is pleased to confirm that Stefan Grove is recovering well after his crash at the Bathurst 12-hour this past weekend. Stefan has been cleared of any major injuries and is in good spirits. The team thanks the fans, medical staff, and everyone for their support during this time. Stefan's health and safety are our top priority, and we look forward to seeing him race again soon. Following the cleanup of this massive accident, BMW continued to lead while in positions 1 and 2, while Jamek Racing's number 183 Audi would be placed in third at the time. Later on, the KTM GT2, which is also referred to as a fan favorite, unfortunately was put into the garage after running in 16th at the time, ahead of the remaining GT4 entries. The car was suspected to have an overheating issue, and thankfully the KTM Crossbow did return to the track later on. With under halfway distance completed, the leading BMWs were under threat from multiple cars, and at the front of that train chasing down the M4s was the Kraft Bamboo Mercedes, which remember brought out the first safety car early on when it was beached in the gravel at the final turn, and now it had rejoined the fight for the overall lead. But inevitably, those BMWs would hold on to the leading positions. Soon, bad news followed for a former contender of the win, the number 183 Jamek Racing Audi R8 LMS GT3 Evo, as the car had a steering issue, which forced it to retire with Ricardo Feller behind the wheel at the time. Drama then followed for another race-winning contender, as Maxime Martin crashed in the Team GMR Mercedes, heading towards the final turn, and eventually the Mercedes was forced to retire from the event, which was such a shame because this car had a good shot at winning the race. Now, as we neared the finish for the 22nd edition of Australia's International Endurance Race, it became clear that the top 6 cars were the entries in the fight for the overall win. This included the 2 BMWs from Team WRT, which were showing amazing pace throughout this event. Then there was the number 75 and number 77 Mercedes cars, the defending winners of this event, the Absolute Racing number 911 Porsche, and finally the number 26 Ferrari 296 from Arise Racing GT, as the Perth-based team was looking to take Ferrari back to the top step for the very first time since 2017. Speaking of Ferrari, their number 26 car with Australian Will Brown behind the wheel was involved in a very exciting battle with the main Porsche running up front. Brown and Absolute Racing's driver Alessio Piccarello both displayed great defensive and overtaking maneuvers, which is one of the reasons why the Bathurst 12-hour is an all-time classic every year the event takes place. Over in the BMW and Team WRT camp, they decided to make a final driver swap during a scheduled pit for the leading number 32 car, as Sheldon van der Linde would hand things over to his brother Kelvin van der Linde, who would inevitably be the driver to take the M4 to the finishing line. And the South African was the racer that Team WRT entrusted to bring the car home in first place. BMW clearly had a fast car, arguably even the best performing out of all the entries entered into this Bathurst 12-hour, as they led the majority of laps in this venue. And at this point in the race, it became clear that out of all the car manufacturers in this race, BMW had the best chance of winning with either of their M4 GT3s. With around 40 minutes to go, it was Kelvin van der Linde up in the lead in the number 32 BMW, closely followed by the Arise Racing GT team's number 26 Ferrari, which had yet to pit for the final stop in this venue, while those 2 Mercedes I mentioned earlier were taking up 3rd and 4th at the time, while Raffaele Marciello in the second BMW was right behind those AMG GT3 Evos. The Ferraris certainly made life difficult for the BMW, as the 2 cars were side by side for the lead, with Ferrari even taking over first temporarily, but eventually the 296 GT3 did pit for the final stop, and the M4 GT3 with Kelvin van der Linde still behind the wheel was released to take over the lead once more. Meanwhile, Marciello got ahead of the number 75 Mercedes with Jules Gounon behind the wheel at the time, to put the number 46 car into 3rd, and with just over 6 minutes to go, Lucas Auer's number 77 Kraft Bamboo Racing Mercedes came into the pits from 2nd, which allowed Marciello to take back the position. Back in the lead though, all Kelvin van der Linde needed to do was to get that car to the finishing line in first, and that's exactly what he did, as the South African racer led away a 1-2 for BMW to allow the German Mark to win the Bathurst 12-hour in 2025. The number 32 BMW M4 GT3 from Team WRT would win this race after a fantastic drive from the pilots Augusto Farfus and brothers Sheldon and Kelvin van der Linde. BMW would also make history and set multiple records. First, this would be BMW's 3rd overall victory at the Bathurst 12-hour, which puts them equal to Audi, Mazda, and Mercedes as the most successful car brands at this event. And this was their first win since 2010, when the BMW 335i Turbo took victory. The van der Linde brothers also made history as the first brothers to win the Bathurst 12-hour overall, And this was the first time a team took up the top 2 spots on the overall podium since 2011, with Team Yost winning with their Audi R8 LMS GT3s by taking 1st and 2nd place. With the number 46 BMW completing a 1-2 result for Team WRT, which also featured Valentino Rossi on the podium for the very first time, this left the number 75 Mercedes from 75 Express to take 3rd place, with Jules Gounon bringing the car home onto the podium for the 4th year in a row. Following the podium sitters was the number 77 Craft Bamboo Racing Mercedes in 4th, and the number 26 Ferrari from Arise GT completed the top 5. Also, quick shout out for the KTM Crossbow, as finally the car was able to finish this event at Mount Panorama, which was a big achievement for the Vantage Racing Squad, especially considering that there was only one of its kind this year. So that completes my race recap of the 2025 Meguiar's Bathurst 12-hour. What did you think about this event? And are you excited for the future Intercontinental GT Challenge rounds this season? Well, make sure to let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. If you like endurance racing, definitely subscribe to this channel if you haven't already, because I'm releasing videos on a weekly basis regarding the WEC, IMSA, Intercontinental GT, and much more. To watch more content now, check out these suggested videos I've put on screen. For now though, that's all from me. Thanks for watching.